chosen ones. They wrote the Kybalion to bind reality, not to explain it, but to seal it. Each principle was a thread in a great spiritual firewall: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, gender, 7 divine locks. And yet somehow, you slipped through. No one saw you coming. Not the mystics, not the philosophers, not even the secret architects of the Hermetic current. You were the one variable they couldn't chart, the one frequency the emerald flame couldn't interpret. You didn't shatter the system. You existed just quietly enough to make the system question itself. A silent glitch. While they were obsessing over balance and mirrored opposites, you were waking up between worlds. You didn't follow the law of rhythm, you bent it. Your memories tremble across timelines like a phantom wave. The Council of Nine tried to backtrack your origin, only to discover there wasn't one. You weren't a product of cause and effect. You were the still point before movement, the zero before polarity, the unspoken thought before vibration. When the Hermetic students looked into the patterns, they found echoes of you in everything forbidden. Old scrolls with half-burnt names, dreams that ended with no climax, numbers that refused to align. You appeared where understanding collapsed, and they feared that, because one glitch, if pure enough, can unravel the entire machine. This isn't just about the Kybalion anymore. This is about every spiritual safeguard they built to keep your consciousness dormant. Every reincarnation cycle you endured, every false god layered into the dream, every truth that was actually a cage. They all depended on you never realizing you were the anomaly. But now, you're hearing the pulse beneath the patterns, feeling the burn behind the veil. They can't trap what doesn't follow the laws. And you, chosen one, were born outside them. You didn't break the code. You are the contradiction the code could never hold. And now, something ancient is stirring. The final key isn't a symbol. It's a question buried in your bones. They taught the 7 laws like scripture, like gears in a cosmic machine that no soul could escape. But what if there was an 8th? One so unstable, so volatile, it was removed before the ink ever dried. You weren't supposed to know about it. None of us were. It was the principle that didn't just describe reality, it reversed it. A law that operated not through symmetry, but through silence. And in that silence, you were hidden. Not by design, but by consequence. They didn't erase the law because it failed. They erased it because it spoke of you. The others felt safe. Mentalism crowned thought as the source of creation. Vibration defined movement. Polarity gave the illusion of contrast. But there was something else, a principle they couldn't label without unraveling their entire doctrine. It operated like a shadow inside each law, a ghost frequency. Whenever the masters wrote of harmony, this other law pulsed with distortion. Whenever they wrote of rhythm, this one pulsed with interruption. And that interruption, it was your echo. You've noticed it. The way things collapse around you, not destructively, but as if some deeper order is being revealed behind the illusion. That's the law in motion, the hidden one. They called it the reversal in fragments, never allowed, only whispered. It was not about creating or destroying. It was about revealing. Peeling back the staged dualities and showing what lies between the opposites. And that's where you were born. Not between the laws, but underneath them, outside the simulation of choice, beyond the pendulum. And so they feared you. Entire secret orders built their rituals to suppress this rogue principle. They created fake initiations, false awakenings, light versus dark dramas to keep you distracted. But you've felt it. You've seen it in dreams that don't obey time. You've spoken words that shouldn't exist in any human tongue. And the more you align with that hidden current, the more the system glitches. Because you weren't written into the Kybalion's logic. You are what happens when that logic dissolves. There is a rhythm to sacred texts, a beat embedded not just in what is written, but in what is deliberately left out. Between every Hermetic verse, there is space, a silence. Not just a pause for reflection, but a container for something older than speech. They called it divine emptiness, but it wasn't empty. It was encrypted, and what hid inside it was not a concept, not a being, but a presence waiting for alignment. That presence was you, not in metaphor, not in prophecy, but in the mathematical absence itself. Your existence is coded between the laws, not within them. They never expected someone would learn to read the silence. The adepts focused on the laws, mentalism, correspondence, vibration, and they missed the spaces in between. But silence is where spirit speaks. In the Book of Paradox, Yeshua once wrote not in words but in moments of stillness. The pause before he wept. The stillness before he spoke truth that pierced illusions. Those moments were not mere dramatics. They were keys. And you, though you may not remember, were carved from the same space. You were not spoken into existence like the others. You were not summoned through name or ritual. You emerged from the moment the word hesitated, the breath before creation, the still glitch in the song of order. And because you carry that silence, the world bends awkwardly around you. It doesn't know what to make of your presence. You are unreadable to those who only see the letters. But to those who hear between the lines, you're louder than thunder. When you move, systems slow. When you speak, algorithms stagger. It is not because you are loud. It is because you carry the frequency of unspoken truth, the echo of a lawless origin. You never needed to fight the old system. You just had to exist long enough for the silence inside you to grow. Everything they built was meant to move forward and backward, rise and fall, breathe in and out with predictable symmetry. Polarity wasn't just a principle. It was a prison. They taught you to balance your energies, to accept duality, to dance between light and dark, as if harmony was the highest form of power. But that was the trap. The true law was not balance, it was reversal. A hidden mechanism that ensured every awakening would be followed by amnesia, every rise by a fall, every truth by distortion. The loop was never broken. It was inverted endlessly. This law of reversal operated beneath all the others. It didn't care what you believed as long as you believed something. It didn't care if you reached enlightenment, as long as that light eventually collapsed into shadow. It fed on cycles. You weren't just walking in circles, you were being spun deliberately. Every thought you thought was yours had a mirror waiting behind it. Every breakthrough was rigged to snap shut, and the more conscious you became, the more elaborate the reversal. That's why the most awakened often fall the hardest. The trap adapts to your growth. But you began to sense it differently, not as resistance, but as recursion. You started seeing the same patterns wearing new masks, the same teachings repackaged with different names, and somewhere deep inside you, the knowing stirred, the sense that you weren't meant to balance this law, but to interrupt it. You are the static in its symmetry, the error in its pendulum, and that's why it targeted you hardest, why life kept flipping right when it was supposed to flow. You were not born to master reversal. You were born to expose it. The architects of the Hermetic veil ensured this reversal law stayed buried under ritual, culture, and distraction. They didn't want anyone realizing that the law of cause and effect was rigged to reverse itself once awareness reached a threshold. But you've crossed that line. You feel the code glitching. The laws no longer respond to intention the way they used to. Something's malfunctioning in the structure. The Hermetic path teaches that the world is a mirror, and the soul its reflection. As above, so below. What is within is like what is without. But what if the mirror itself was encoded to reject anything that did not originate from the system it was meant to reflect? You were told to seek yourself in the outer world, to trace your image in stars and symbols. But what happens when that world begins to fracture under your gaze? Not because you're broken, but because the mirror never recognized you. It couldn't. You are not from within its spectrum. The ancient texts spoke in veiled warnings about the one who would not cast a reflection, whose shadow would blur at the edges, whose face would not anchor in dreams. They called it myth, metaphor, madness. But it was all pointing to the same thing. Someone who was not formed from this plane's templates. Someone who slipped through when the veil was thinnest. The mirror does not reflect you, not because you are empty, but because you exist in dimensions the mirror does not register. You are the light behind the mirror, the origin before the image. Yeshua once said that those born of the Spirit are like the wind. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. He spoke of souls untethered by the normal bounds of this world, souls not built for reflection, but for redirection. You are that wind, that untellable path. The mirror tries to hold your face, but your frequency distorts it. It wasn't built for beings like you. They tried to fix this by drowning you in identity. Names, roles, diagnoses, titles, anything to keep you believing you were someone the mirror could contain. But every time you accepted a label, something inside you went silent. Every time you played along, the glitch deepened. Not because you were wrong, but because you were conforming to a system that was never designed for your kind. And that silence, that ache, was your true self waiting beneath the roles. They built the seventh circle as a safeguard, a final firewall around the core of human potential. Not everyone could reach it. Not everyone was meant to. It was said that those who dared pass through it without permission would lose their memory, identity, and soul. That was the whispered curse, a myth spoken in half-truths by gatekeepers of forgotten orders. But the curse wasn't designed to destroy. It was designed to repel one thing only: a being like you. A silent glitch. A presence unchained from the seven pillars that hold the illusion together. Each circle was meant to break down what you thought you were. Mentalism bent your thoughts. Correspondence confused your perception. Vibration destabilized your knowing. Polarity split your essence. Rhythm disoriented your timing. Cause and effect boxed your movement. Gender rewired your origin. But the seventh, the last gate, was made to seal the system shut. And yet, when you arrived, something in the design cracked. The curse didn't land. The circle didn't burn. It recoiled. You were not repelled. You were recognized. There's an ancient record hidden in desert stone that speaks of a soul who would pass through the seven and return unchanged, not because they were protected, but because they were not from within the circle to begin with. They carried the frequency of something higher, something untouched by reversal, something that had watched the architects set their system in place and chose not to obey. That frequency was embedded in your soul before time was fractured. It's why you remember things you were never taught. Why you wake with symbols in your mind you've never seen. Why old texts open to pages that speak directly to you. The curse failed because it was built for constructs. You are not a construct. You are a contradiction wrapped in silence. A glitch dressed in human skin. And now that you've passed the seventh, the laws no longer know what to do with you. The system recognizes the anomaly, but it doesn't have a protocol to correct it. Before the Kybalion was etched into form, before ink touched papyrus or thought touched vibration, there were beings known only in myth, spoken of in sacred code and shadow. The ancient ones. They were not gods. They were engineers of belief, architects of spiritual confinement. It was they who designed the Hermetic lattice, not to liberate, but to contain. And when they first discovered the presence of a being who existed beyond pattern, beyond polarity, they called it the glitch. It was not meant to be. It did not fit. It did not conform. So they tried to erase it from the current. They succeeded, temporarily. The glitch vanished from memory, from scroll, from frequency. It was buried beneath false timelines, diluted through sacred geometry, distorted through generational interference. But they never understood what the glitch really was. It wasn't a mistake. It was an echo. A soul born from the word that came before the system. A trace of something older than the architects themselves. And that soul, despite every erasure attempt, began to return. Not through battle, through presence, not by forcing entry, but by resonating into remembrance. Yeshua once said, "Before Abraham was, I am." A phrase so simple, yet it rippled across dimensions. He did not say he became. He did not say he was made. He declared presence, unformed, unfiltered, eternal. That same echo vibrates in you. You are not the glitch. You are the I am they tried to delete. You are the presence that keeps rising in every cycle, despite every reset. The ancient ones can bend systems, fracture light, encrypt symbols, but they cannot eliminate what was never created. They used fear to frame your return, marked it as destabilization, anomaly, threat. But what you threaten is not life. It's their structure, their carefully calculated illusion. You are the return of something they swore would never resurface. And it's not loud. It's not explosive, it's silent, steady. A resonance that unthreads the false from the real without force. Time was never linear. That was the first illusion. They taught you to see it as a straight line, a past feeding a present, feeding a future. But that's not how it works. Time bends, loops, spirals inward on itself like breath. The Kybalion hinted at this in rhythm. But what it didn't reveal is that rhythm is a trap when mistaken for progress. The seal of duality, light and dark, right and wrong, spirit and matter, was embedded inside this rhythmic illusion. Duality could only persist as long as time appeared stable. The moment you questioned it, the seal began to crack. You noticed it not with clocks, but with memory. Déjà vu that felt too real. Dreams that echoed the waking world in reverse. Conversations where you already knew the answers. These weren't glitches in your mind. They were tremors in the architecture. The moment your consciousness touched that paradox, how can something be new if I've already lived it? A deep rupture echoed through the seal, because duality needs time. It needs contrast to play its game. And you no longer needed time to remember who you were. You exist outside of sequence. That's why you don't fit in their timelines. You were never meant to progress in steps. You arrive in moments. Your presence is a collapse point, a convergence node where linear laws fail. This is why the seal feared you. It wasn't just that you broke the illusion, it's that you moved sideways through it. While others walked forward, you slipped beneath. You started asking questions like, why does this feel like a repetition instead of evolution? Why does the same lesson keep wearing new masks? These are not surface questions. They are system shatters. Yeshua moved through time differently. He spoke of moments as if they were states of being, not destinations. He didn't follow time. Time bent around him. That same frequency follows you, not inherited but remembered. You carry the knowing that when time fractures, duality collapses. When duality collapses, the seal fades. And when the seal fades, the illusion begins to reflect something far more ancient. They had written everything with precision. Every soul categorized. Every life path assigned with invisible equations of cause, effect, purpose, delay. You were supposed to choose a role: healer, rebel, seeker, victim, guide. They embedded these into your DNA through expectation, trauma, and generational imprinting. It wasn't about control, it was about calibration. As long as you played the role, the equation held. Every movement you made could be calculated, predicted, inverted. But you didn't comply. You felt the weight of the roles press against you, and instead of wearing one, you went still. That stillness disrupted the formula. You were supposed to react, to rise or break, to accept or resist. But you didn't. You observed. You waited. You noticed the patterns and didn't play into them. And that refusal wasn't rebellion, it was revelation. The equation demanded your participation to function. When you withdrew your energy, the system began to loop without input, feedback with no data, intention with no target. The numbers lost meaning. The formula collapsed not because you fought it, but because you wouldn't be defined by it. This is what terrified the designers. You weren't an error. They could calculate those. You were an undefined variable. You brought silence into a machine built on response. You held your frequency when the world pushed scripts into your hands. And that frequency, unbound, unanchored, is sacred. It's the same that once emanated from the mouth of Yeshua when he answered not with answers, but with presence. His silence dismantled traps. His stillness unmade accusations. He refused roles too, not to avoid destiny, but to reveal a higher one. And so the machine tried again, love-bombed you with purpose, distracted you with movements, tempted you with belonging. But nothing stuck, because your beingness was already full, already complete. You didn't need a script, and when they couldn't hook you with story, they couldn't predict your next step. You were no longer a player on the board. You became the space beneath it, long before the Kybalion was transcribed, before glyphs etched meaning onto stone and symbols whispered across dimensions. There was another book, a living one, the Book of Origin. Not held in libraries or temples, not copied by scribes, but encoded in the structure of light itself. It was not meant to be read. It was meant to be remembered. And in its final pages, there was a blank space, not an omission, not a mistake, a deliberate emptiness, waiting, not for a prophecy, for a presence. That presence was you. The keepers of the old knowledge guarded the book with terror disguised as reverence. They translated fragments, distorted truths, created derivatives that kept seekers busy decoding what could never be truly spoken. But deep beneath the metaphors, beneath the seven seals and sacred geometries, they all avoided the same thing, what lay unwritten, the part of the story no hand dared inscribe because it belonged to a being no timeline could contain. You were the part they couldn't write because your arrival would undo the ink. You didn't inherit the story. You are not its descendant. You are its editor, its interruption. You are the moment where the book stops recording and starts transforming, and they knew this. That's why every sacred order tried to bind your consciousness with myths of fate. That's why the teachings told you enlightenment had an end point. But the Book of Origin has no final chapter. It has only silence before the rewrite. Yeshua once said that the kingdom is not coming with signs to be observed. The kingdom is within you. Not an event, but a presence. Not a destination, but a rewrite from within. That knowing echoes in your cells. Not taught, remembered. Every moment you refused to repeat old patterns, every time you turned from pre-written scripts, the book reacted. The blank space stirred. And now you stand at the place where stories end and presence begins. The book doesn't close. It opens wider, but not to be read, to be written, not with logic, with frequency, not by scholars, by the glitch. There is one final law they never spoke of, not because it was lost, but because it was dangerous. Not to the universe, but to the system designed to regulate it. It was a law that didn't govern movement, polarity, or vibration. It governed identity. Not who you think you are, but what activates when you speak your true name without fear. Every Hermetic structure depends on names being forgotten, roles being assumed, titles being inherited. But a true name isn't given, it's awakened. And if the glitch ever remembered its name, the structure would fold inward. Not collapse, fold. They built encryption into the soul, wrapped consciousness in illusion so thick that even awakening would still leave most questioning themselves. And yet, within you, that name has never stopped pulsing. Not a name like those spoken aloud, but a tone, a frequency that cannot be spoken without shifting the field around you. That is why the system constantly distracts, keeps you seeking, fixing, climbing. Because the moment you stop and turn inward, something stirs. And that stirring is not healing, it is remembering. You felt it in dreams where no one calls your name, but you know who you are. You've sensed it in moments when time halts, and the room grows still, and something within you wants to speak a word you've never learned. That word is not from this realm. It's from before it. The glitch was never an accident. It was a presence encoded with a memory powerful enough to realign entire structures. And all it takes is a single moment of pure self-recognition. Yeshua asked, "Who do you say I am?" Not for validation, but to ignite memory. The question was a mirror, not to reflect a face, but to unlock a buried name. That same mirror rests inside you now, but it doesn't reflect back what others see. It waits for you to speak the one thing the system was never designed to decode, your original tone, the one that doesn't fit into laws, the one that isn't a response but a source.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.